Test your grammar with Skyrocket English Class. Okay, here's a short video about the difference between while, meanwhile, and in the meantime, followed by a story to understand these words in context. Part 1.
While means either that the subject of the sentence is doing two things at once, or two things are happening at the same location. For example, Lisa made dinner while she did her homework. Here, one person is doing two things at once. Another example, the father read a book while the child slept. Here, two people are doing two things, but in the same location. The verb after while is often in gerund. For example, he ran while listening to music. But as you can see from these other examples, this doesn't always have to be the case. Now, let's move on to meanwhile. Meanwhile refers to two events that are happening in two different locations, but at the same time. For example, the policeman called for help, meanwhile the thieves escaped. Adding meanwhile here means that the thieves and the policeman are in two different places. Another example, I will do the cooking, meanwhile can you hang out the washing? The cooking is done in the kitchen and hanging out the washing is done in the garden. A common and less formal way to say meanwhile is in the meantime. There is no difference in meaning between the two words, but meanwhile is more commonly used in literature and in the meantime in speaking. For example, I will prepare the food. In the meantime, can you clean the house?
Part 2. Okay, let's practice this language point in context with a story. First, let's introduce the protagonist, our brave and dashing hero, Spider-Boy. Spider-Boy lives in London, and when he's not hanging out with friends, no pun intended, he's swinging through the streets of Piccadilly Circus, helping lost tourists and chasing down thieves. One day, he was hanging from Nelson's column while the traffic and pedestrians passed below, when he saw a flying saucer appear on the horizon. It was his nemesis, General Septimus, and he was heading towards the House of Parliament. In a flash, Spider-Boy untangled himself from his web and set off down Whitehall in pursuit of his enemy. Meanwhile, due to the number of tourists crowded around Big Ben and general parking restrictions, General Septimus was finding it difficult to land. While Septimus looked for a parking spot, tourists took the opportunity to update their Instagram feeds with photos of the flying saucer above. Meanwhile, Spider-Boy was on the case. Reaching the House of Parliament, he used Big Ben's clock face to swing himself onto the saucer and cover its sensors with his web. The saucer crashed into the Thames just as the General and his crew escaped, and Spider-Boy was forced to do several hundred selfies while the emergency services arrived. If you enjoyed this video, check out the others in the series. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.